Money doesn't follow the greedy, it follows the valuable. Napoleon Hill. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. I had the worst life a man could imagine. Not just broke, empty. My wife left. Quietly. Like someone finally stepping out of a long mistake. She didn't cry, she didn't shout, just closed the door and didn't look back. The kids stopped calling. Maybe out of shame. Or maybe because they learned from me that silence is cheaper than pain. I didn't lose everything at once. It happened gradually, invisibly, like leaking water in a dark basement. First, I stopped dreaming. Then I stopped trying. Then I started lying to myself that everything was fine, that someday things would magically change. But nothing changed because I didn't. Bills piled up like bricks on my chest. I borrowed to pay what I already owed. I stopped opening emails. I deleted banking apps. I mastered the art of pretending. But deep down, I knew. I was sinking. I blamed the economy, my childhood, the country, the taxes, the people who had more. I blamed everything, except the man in the mirror. One night, sitting alone with a cold plate of food I couldn't finish, something inside me cracked. Not like a scream, like a whisper. This is not the end, unless you want it to be. I decided I would change. Not survive, change. Become a man money would follow. Not chase, not beg, attract. I didn't want to be rich for the cars or the houses. I wanted power over my life. I wanted to walk into a store and not check prices. I wanted to stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, is this aligned with my goals? I wanted my kids to call again, not out of pity, but respect. So I made a vow. I would become the wealthiest man in a city where most people gave up. I didn't know how yet, but I was done being the man who hoped and waited. First, I had to face a brutal truth. I knew nothing about money. I worked, I earned, and I lost. Every month felt like water through my hands. And still, I believed money was the problem. But money was just the mirror. I started digging into my past. Where did it all go wrong? Why, no matter how hard I worked, did I stay poor? And the answers hit harder than any debt collector. I never saved, not even a little. Every coin I touched, I spent. I used money to feel alive, to feel worthy, even for a moment. I bought things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like. I called it living. It was slow suicide. I had no plan, no structure. I feared numbers. I thought budgeting was for accountants. I believed money will come, a lie dressed as hope. Worse, I never built anything. No assets, no streams of income, just one job, one lifeline, and a prayer that nothing goes wrong. I confused income with wealth. I thought if I earned more, I'd be okay. But I didn't have a money problem. I had a thinking problem. I had to change everything. Not just my habits, but my identity. And that started with listening, watching, learning, finding people who had what I wanted. Not just on the outside, but inside. Calm, confidence, options. They didn't chase money. They built systems. They understood value. They lived by rules I'd never heard before. And slowly, I began to see the patterns. But before I tell you what they taught me and how everything changed, I want you to know this. If you see yourself in my story, subscribe to this channel. Let this message find the ones who need it most. And join the Telegram. There, we go deeper, where YouTube can't. And if this part of the story feels like your life, write in the comments, I'm done running from poverty. Let's see how many of us are ready for truth. Because this is just the beginning. I had to face it. I was the architect of my own poverty. Not because I was lazy. I worked more than most. I hustled, said yes to everything, stayed late, took on extra hours, but I was financially illiterate. I confused effort with progress. I confused movement with growth. I thought hard work was enough. It's not. It never was. The people I envied weren't working harder. They were thinking differently. They weren't chasing income. They were building value. I was stuck in a cycle. Earn, spend, stress, repeat. No matter how much I made, I always ended up with nothing. And the worst part? I believed that's just how life worked, that being constantly broke was normal. I started tracking everything, every dollar, every transaction, and for the first time, I saw the leaks, mindless spending, emotional purchases, food I didn't finish, subscriptions I didn't use, clothes I wore once. I wasn't poor because life was unfair. I was poor because I lived in denial. I didn't respect money, so it never stayed. I kept hearing one phrase in my head: pay yourself first. I used to laugh at that. I thought, how can I pay myself when I have bills? But I was wrong. Paying yourself first isn't about the amount. It's about the principle. It means you are a priority. It means your future matters. The moment I started putting away even the smallest amount, everything shifted. Not financially, but mentally. I stopped being a victim. I started becoming an owner. I began applying the rules the wealthy live by. Rule 1: spend less than you earn. Simple, brutal, unsexy, and true. Rule 2: build assets, not just income. Assets feed you when you sleep. Rule 3: avoid liabilities disguised as status. Expensive cars, flashy clothes, unnecessary upgrades, they cost you freedom. Rule 4: track your flow. If you don't measure it, you can't control it. I read, listened, studied. The rich aren't smarter. They just operate by different rules. They use time differently. They delay gratification. They think long-term. And most importantly, they see money as a tool, not a reward. That's when I realized I had to unlearn almost everything I thought I knew, because most of it was garbage. Popular advice like just work harder or follow your passion had kept me stuck for years. Passion doesn't pay the rent. Discipline does. Structure does. Smart decisions do. I started treating my finances like a business. I built a simple system. One account for spending, one for saving, one for investing. No emotion, no stories, just math. If the numbers didn't work, I didn't buy. I made sacrifices, yes, but they were strategic, not driven by guilt, but guided by clarity. I started seeing money as energy, and energy needs direction. Without a plan, it scatters. With a plan, it compounds. I didn't need more money. I needed better use of the money I already had. If you've made it this far and something inside you is waking up, subscribe to this channel. This isn't motivation, it's reprogramming. Algorithms hide this kind of truth, but your subscription helps others find it. And join the Telegram. That's where the filters drop. That's where we go deeper, past the surface, into real transformation. And if you feel like you're done living in financial chaos, write in the comments, "I'm done running from poverty." Let's build a community of people who are ready to live with power, not excuses. I started watching people who had what I wanted, not loud wealth, but quiet confidence. The kind of people who didn't panic when things went wrong, who didn't chase, didn't beg. They moved through the world like they had nothing to prove because their money worked for them, not the other way around. I studied them like my life depended on it, because it did. I noticed patterns. They didn't talk much about money. They controlled it. They had rules, not motivational quotes, but real systems. They knew exactly where their income came from and where it went. Every dollar had a job. They didn't waste time debating unnecessary expenses because they already knew what mattered. I realized then, wealth is not about luck or talent. It's about behavior, consistency, discipline, long-term thinking. They didn't rely on one stream of income. They built multiples. Even if one was small, it still counted. They understood leverage. While I was selling time for money, they were using money to buy time. They owned assets, things that put money in their pocket, investments, digital products, rentals, skills. Meanwhile, I had liabilities dressed as comforts. It hit me hard. I asked one man I respected, "What's the first thing someone should do to stop being broke?" He didn't hesitate. Understand the difference between wants and needs, and build discipline around it. That sounded too simple, but then I lived it. Every time I chose not to buy something I didn't need, I felt stronger. Every time I delayed a purchase and used the money to build something, I felt in control. Every decision built a habit, and those habits became my new identity. I didn't become wealthy overnight, but I became powerful, and that was more important. Power is the ability to choose, not having to say yes to everything, not living in fear of every bill, not bending your life to fit your financial mistakes. Power is when you don't need the world to change, because you've changed. And that change started when I stopped pretending I knew what I was doing and started copying those who clearly did. Once I started applying what I learned, everything began to shift. I stopped chasing more income and started managing what I already had. I created a simple rule. Every time I got paid, 10% was untouchable. Not for bills, not for pleasure, only for building. At first, it felt pointless. 10% of a small amount is still small, but the change wasn't just in the bank. It was in my mind. I began seeing myself as someone who builds, someone who respects what he earns. That mindset changed how I saw every purchase. Was this thing helping me grow, or was it stealing my future? I built a habit of asking before every expense, will this feed me, free me, or just numb me? That one question saved me from countless traps. I stopped upgrading my phone, stopped chasing trends, stopped spending just to feel something. Instead, I started buying books that taught me skills. I bought tools that helped me produce, not consume. I realized most of what I used to spend money on was just anesthesia, a way to avoid facing the truth. And then, for the first time, I built an asset. It wasn't big. It didn't make me rich, but it was mine. A small online service, built on a skill I already had. It didn't replace my job, but it made me feel different. Not a beggar, not a follower, a creator. That feeling is addictive because it's freedom in its purest form. I started understanding that wealth isn't measured in how much you earn, but in how little you need to feel secure. I became obsessed with cutting out the unnecessary. Subscriptions, habits, people, anything that drained me without a return. I simplified my life, and in that simplicity, I found power. Progress was slow, but it was real, and every small win built confidence. I was no longer reacting to life, I was designing it. At some point, I realized the greatest asset I could ever build was myself. Not a stock, not a business, not a real estate property, me. My thinking, my skills, my discipline. So I turned inward. I stopped looking for shortcuts and started working on becoming someone worth investing in. I improved my health. I woke up early, read daily, wrote down what I learned. I treated myself like a project, because that's what I was, unfinished but full of potential. I took every spare hour and poured it into something useful. Online courses, books, content that didn't entertain but educated. I picked one skill and focused on mastering it. I stopped trying to do everything. I picked one thing I could offer the world and went deep. That's when things started changing. Clients came, not many, not instantly, but enough to prove the model, enough to show me that my time had value beyond a paycheck. I learned the difference between being busy and being effective. Before, I filled my days with activity to feel productive. Now, I measured everything by output. Was this moving me forward? Was this generating income or building a system that would? If not, I cut it. I stopped saying yes to things that didn't align. I stopped giving my time to people who didn't respect it. Boundaries became part of my strategy. My income grew slowly, but steadily. And more importantly, it became layered. My job was still there, but now I had freelance income, a small digital product, an investment fund growing on autopilot. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I was no longer fully dependent on one source of income. I had options, and options are power. I kept reinvesting, not just money, but focus. Every time I earned more, I upgraded systems, not lifestyle. Better software, better tools, better mentors. I no longer needed instant gratification. I was playing the long game. That shift alone separated me from 90% of people I used to know. I didn't feel rich. I felt responsible. And that felt better, because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping someone would save me or that luck would show up. I had become someone who could build, earn, and grow, no matter what happened in the world outside. That's when I knew. Money didn't make me powerful. Becoming this version of myself did. Then it happened, not overnight, not with fireworks, but quietly. One day I looked at my account and there was money left over, not because I got a raise, not because of a miracle, but because my systems were working. My spending was intentional. My income was diversified. My mindset was different. And for the first time, I felt it. Financial peace. I wasn't rich by society's standards, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew that even if I lost one stream of income, I wouldn't fall apart. I had a foundation now, built with sweat, discipline, and thousands of invisible decisions that no one else saw. Opportunities started coming, not because I was lucky, but because I had positioned myself to notice and receive them. When you have margin, you can say yes to what others miss. You can take calculated risks. You can invest without desperation. I stopped clinging to every dollar. I knew what I was building. That clarity gave me strength. And then something strange happened. Money started following me. I wasn't chasing clients anymore. They were coming to me. People trusted me because I wasn't desperate. I could say no. I had proof of work, results, consistency. My presence changed. I no longer needed to prove my worth. It showed in how I moved, how I spoke, how I handled challenges. I wasn't faking stability. I had earned it. People around me started noticing. Friends asked for advice. Some mocked, others followed. I didn't try to convince anyone. I just lived differently. And that difference was magnetic. When you become the kind of person who can manage wealth, wealth naturally finds its way to you. Not always in huge amounts at first, but steadily, surely, persistently. I realized that money doesn't change who you are. It reveals what's already there. And if you've done the inner work, if you've built character, systems, patience, money becomes a servant. not a master. That's the real power. That's the moment when you stop being a slave to circumstances and start shaping them. That's when you stop chasing money, and money starts following you. Looking back, I see it clearly now. I didn't become financially free because I found some secret or followed the perfect plan. I became free because I changed who I was. I stopped being a man who reacted to life and became a man who created it. That was the shift, and that shift created everything else. My independence didn't come from one decision. It came from thousands of small ones, made daily, even when I didn't feel like it. Especially when I didn't feel like it. The techniques were simple, but I lived them. I paid myself first, no matter what. I treated saving as non-negotiable, not optional. I eliminated emotional spending. I tracked every dollar, every week. I built assets before chasing rewards. I never bought something unless I knew how it would serve me long-term. I used automation to remove temptation. Automatic transfers, automated investments, fixed rules. I split my income into purpose-driven categories: survival, growth, freedom. I simplified everything. Less clutter, fewer decisions, clearer focus. I created boundaries around my time. I said no more than yes. I turned off noise, stayed away from trends, and focused on results. I used my mornings to plan and learn. I worked when others distracted themselves. I rested, but with structure. I didn't hustle blindly. I built intelligently. I found mentors I respected and did what they said. I modeled success. I tested, adjusted, and kept moving. And I never forgot why I started. Not to get rich, but to get free. And here's the truth. I wish someone told me earlier. Once you make the real decision, the one where you burn the bridge behind you, the path becomes clear. Not easy, but clear. No turning back. No waiting for perfect timing. Once I said, "This is who I am now," everything started to align. It didn't happen all at once. It came in layers, but it came. You don't need more motivation. You need commitment. You need systems that work without your mood. You need clarity on what matters and the courage to cut everything else. You need to decide fully, not halfway, because halfway decisions get halfway results. I didn't succeed because I never failed. I succeeded because I never stopped moving forward. And here's what matters most. You have a choice, always. The most powerful asset you have is the ability to choose. You can choose to stay where you are, or you can choose to move. You can choose to react, or you can choose to build. You can choose excuses, or you can choose results. The choice is always yours. And once you choose, really choose, you'll see that money isn't the goal. Freedom is. Peace is. Power over your life is. So if you feel that something inside you is ready, act now. Subscribe to this channel. Let this message reach others who are quietly fighting the same battle. And join the Telegram. That's where we dig deeper, speak real, and grow together. If these words struck something in you, write in the comments, "Money now follows me." Or write, "I choose power over excuses." Whatever it is, write it as a promise to yourself. Not for me, for you. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning.